If you knew me before, you wouldn't even look my way.
And welcome back to Sullivan's Unheard Voices. I'm here with Kevin. Now, I want to preface this conversation by saying the first time I saw you interact with Timothy James, and we were at that bar, and I saw you grab your bass guitar and come back.
Oh, this was here about a month or so ago, not long ago. Okay,
yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I remember how impressed I was that you didn't know the music, and you have this conversation with TJ, and you're able to pick it up like that.
Well, thank you.
And that's a testament to and I've always been impressed with how well you play the bass, because it's one of those instruments that's like the unsung hero of a band. Like, everybody gives the guitarist all of the attention,
it's
and
the
lead
most
singer.
Important part of the band.
Oh yeah, it keeps the band on tempo.
It keeps everything together. Mm-hmm. But yes, I appreciate the compliment. Being able to hear what is going on and respond is a skill that is somewhat innate. You know, I grew up in a musical family and heard harmony at a very young age. Mm-hmm. But I've been going to Victor Wooten's camps here for the last several years, and one thing they talk about is quick ears. And it is very important, especially in jam situations. And one of the first things that I did when I got here, thankfully, was play in a house band for a jam. And so you'd have all sorts of people come up, and you don't know what's going to happen, and you just have to hang on. So yeah, that's fun. Thank you. I appreciate that.
It's so how did you get start in the music? Like you say, you grew up around music. Was that just something like an innate talent that you picked up along the way?
Just like Whitney Houston and such, it started at church.
Yeah.
I grew up in a very, very fundamentalist church family, and that could go a whole different direction. But the Church of Christ I grew up in, and we had no instruments in church service. And so I heard 4-part harmony. We all sang, and that's kind of the thing that Church of Christ people do, is everybody sings, whether they're good or not. But I heard 4-part harmony really from birth up.
Okay.
Southern gospel kind of thing. So, and I remember very early locking into the bass guys. Oh.
Yeah.
And that's really where it started. I was in choir in high school. I didn't start playing bass guitar till I was a freshman in high school, and just, played in a few little high school bands. My first band was a Kiss cover band.
Oh, that's awesome.
I was Gene. I've got pictures for that. You can find that on my Facebook. But yeah, a friend of mine, it's interesting because I just got back in touch with Peter Criss, the Peter Criss of that band here within the last couple of years. And he's gone on. I'd lost complete touch with him. He was teaching jazz in China, and he's he played with Diane Shore, who's a jazz vocalist of note. He's also was in Ray Charles' B band for a while, which was Ray Charles' other band when he didn't have to pay for the other guys. But anyway, I caught up with those guys. But yeah, that was our first gig. He was a big Kiss fan, and we all put on makeup and played Kiss songs, and I was Gene.
That's so awesome.
It was fun.
And how did you get into, because we've had conversations along the way about you being a part of a college and being a music director for a radio station.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I want to say this is kind of monumental for me right here, this what's going on, because I was in public radio for about 20 years or so and have interviewed Dave Brubeck, Van Cliburn, Mstislav Rostropovich, Chick Corea, just a number of great, great musicians. This is the first time I've been interviewed as a musician. So this is like monumental for me. But I was a music major. As I said, I grew up going to the Church of Christ, and I actually went to Church of Christ schools. Went to a junior college in Nebraska because they gave me a scholarship to play in a band that traveled to camps all over the country. Did a lot of traveling at age 18, 19 with these groups. Actually met who is now my wife. She was a camper, and I was up there on stage. But I did that for 2 years in Nebraska. I moved to Texas, where there was another Christian school that had another band that was like that. And I got stuck in Texas for 38 years after that. It took me a while to grow up, and it also took me a while to evolve, become from who I was then to who I am now, which is the same guy. I'm just now figuring it out.
I can relate to that in so many ways. Like I remember
you're 62.
I remember how naive I was when I was 18, 19 years old. I really believed the hype that capitalism was going to solve everybody's problems. And I believed the hype that everybody can attain a certain level of success if they try hard enough. And then life gets in the way and teaches you a hard lesson. Sometimes.
Well, all of those things are true. Yes. I mean, what I've told, the one bit of advice I have, I've got 2 boys and I have stepchildren and grandkids. I just had a grandchild born the other day.
Congratulations. Adorable.
Yeah, he's a cute little dude. Ezekiel is his name. But the one thing that I did tell my kids and anybody who would want to listen is you will wind up where your feet take you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And yes, there's going to be all sorts of things that get in the way. And, the dreams that you had, you'll wind up achieving, what you can do. Boy, where are we going to go here?
Well, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about is the structure of colleges.
Okay.
And the reason I want to talk to you about that is because, I used to work at a college, and I'm always fascinated by faculty that take on roles in a college that you look at it today and you're like, wow, am I bummed out that program went away? Because correct me if I'm wrong, but back and you've only been here a few years now?
I moved here during COVID. I retired from. I taught at. I was first, just to get back to your question about the music.
Yeah.
I worked as the music director of a public radio station at a junior college in Texas, Kilgore College, KTPB Radio. I started that in '92. And got my master's in music. They let me go to school while I was doing that. Got my master's in music by '99 and was teaching part-time in 2000 and then moved to the music department in '04. And then I wound up being a music teacher after that. But yes, I mean, your question immediately, I just think of all the politics, and everybody has an agenda at a college and they're legitimate, and who gets the money.
Yeah.
That's really what comes down to it.
And there's a fight over who gets the money every year. A lot of people don't understand that there's a lot of underlining, so much effort. I don't know if it was for your college, but for our college, so much effort was based on enrollment numbers.
Oh, absolutely.
And
it's money. I mean, everything down here, when you started talking about capitalism, is we are now in the product where money rules everything.
Yeah.
I used to say, and I don't want to get this too far into here, I used to say you can have a choice between big government or big corporates having you by the gonads. And now it's pretty much both of them. And I retired as a result of money issues at a college that was having problems. They got a new president, and one of her techniques was to get old contracts out the door as quickly as possible. Because, when you've been there for 25, 30 years, you're getting paid more than somebody that's just starting, probably twice as much. And so I watched my colleagues who were legends at that college, one by one, get escorted out the door one way or another. And then all of a sudden I got put on a performance improvement program for the first time in 25 years.
Yeah.
And then the dean was picky, and I didn't really, for the first time, not like my dean anyway. And so I retired as soon as I was turning 55. As soon as I caught the glimpse that I was going to be next, they were going to let me stay for another year, maybe 2. I think just the end of that year.
Okay.
But they would have non-renewed me, and I knew it. And I just said, I'm not going through this. And I retired because my wife was doing well.
Yeah. And it's interesting because it was the same sort of thing that happened with me, where I was working at a college and they got a new president and a new VP of instruction. And the new VP of instruction is the one who wanted to do all of these drastic changes to the nursing program after this woman who had spent the last 3 years of her life pulling 80, 90-hour weeks to get accreditation. 2 weeks before they get accreditation, he pulls the rug from under the accreditation process.
I've heard so many stories just like this.
Just gutting the program. And it's like, that's it's so bad for the students. It's so bad for the students, I think, anyway.
It's bad for the institution, but I mean, everybody has their vision as to how things are going to work out. And again, everybody has their agenda too.
Yeah.
And the number of students that get brought into and how much the program costs. That college that that I'm talking about also has pretty much gutted, and I haven't been back there in a couple of years, but it's pretty much gutted the music department as we knew it anyway. There was a big scandal there. I told you that I was the music director of the public radio station.
Yeah.
Part of my job was to acquire a library, and it was a classical music station. I also did a jazz show, and I acquired every major work of classical music you can find. I mean, we had about, I think it was like 15,000 CDs of classical music, and I did a lot of research to make sure I had a bit of everything, and then I had a jazz collection of about 5,000 CDs. Anyway, I told you that I moved over to the music department at a certain point. I was lucky because about 2 years later, the radio station was sold. The license to the radio station was sold, not any of the equipment, not any of the property, just the license and the transmitter to K-Love, which is a big contemporary Christian conglomerate that's been all over the country, for a cool $2 million just to get the license. So anyway, I was lucky to have moved over to the music department. But the big scandal happened because those CDs have been longing for a home. For the music department sort of used them, but the kids would only use so much of them, so they'd been in boxes. So here, about a year ago, the new music person with the assistance, I believe, of the dean who I just spoke of, decided to put all of those CDs in the trash, along with a bunch of music scores. And we're talking about full orchestral scores of, piano. We had a concerto program where the piano teacher would have their players play with an orchestra.
Yeah.
And she had full scores, which that costs money to get parts for everybody. In the trash bin. And so they had a public meeting, one of their board meetings, and I wrote a letter that got read to it, and I had no idea this was where we were going with this, but yeah, that was kind of scandalous back in Kilgore.
That's interesting, because I had a very similar kind of experience. Like, we had a motorcycle program that was discontinued. The motorcycle program wasn't discontinued. The Harley Davidson portion of the motorcycle repair program, because it was a technical college.
I was wondering when you said I thought, were you teaching to ride, but you were teaching to work on motorcycles?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, but they closed the Harley program, and they had 12 pristine original Harley Davidsons, and they scrapped them.
I just started riding motorcycles within the last 10 years. I've got an Indian. I've got a little Harley Sportster I need to sell too. But wow, because that's money right there. And they also, one of the things they threw away, they had a huge record collection of classical music, mostly classical music and other things from mostly the 60s and 70s.
So some of that stuff might not even be available digitally.
No, it would not. Yeah, because a lot of the times those classical music companies would put those to digital and make them CDs, but a lot of those performances were not ever reproduced digitally. And and this is in the heyday of probably the biggest performance as far as classical musicians. By the 60s, they were the greatest as they ever had been.
Yeah.
And then it started, they still have those great players, but there's not so many of them as there were back then. People don't go to orchestra class as much as they used to and love that and spend the hours and hours it takes to be in the Itzhak Perlman or whatever.
Do you think that's more of the fact that a lot of the programs like band and things like that have sort of been pushed down on the priority list?
Well,
because like we're not getting young people as involved in music as I would like.
Yes, but yes, I do certainly agree with you, and that's been a fight forever and ever and ever is funding for arts and funding for and the importance of music programs in education. You know, back in the Middle Ages, music was part of an education because, and this was my first day at in my music appreciation classes, convincing students that the reason music education is important is it combines science, math, physics, psychology, philosophy, you name any subject there is. It's music can be tied to it, history, anything. And it is sort of the culmination of all of the subjects. And it's one that most people, not everybody, not everyone is as adept to even listening to music as, let alone playing it. But the majority of people find music to be something that hits us somehow, somewhere, makes us dance, makes us sad, makes us whatever. But educationally, yes, this has been a funding problem for, ever since money became as important as it, when was it that happened? But,
yeah. Well, it's hard to say because it sort of happened.
It's always been that way.
It declined over time.
Boy. Yes, the importance of, we'll use the medical field, for example. I haven't been to a doctor for a long time, and it's because of the way the system is run right now. I was the man who delivered me, Dr. Frederick, was my doctor all through up into high school, and I would trust him, and I would know that he was out for me. But now doctors don't have that. This isn't my place to say. They don't have that choice now. They have to do whatever the insurance companies tell them they can and can't do. And it's all run by money. Hospitals are now more profit-driven than they were when I was a kid. Anything, including education, is driven by money. And it's, to me, sad.
I couldn't agree more because it's like, you're missing the most important component.
Yes, you're
people.
You're not focusing on the substance. You're focusing on what you can get out of it.
Yeah, and I remember a time where you went through education and you got a well-rounded education. And even if you were in an art program or a music program, you still had the academics that sort of went with that. And then if you had there were opportunities for that well-rounded was somewhere along the way. And I remember at like 2013 and 2014 timeframe was when I was working at the college. And there was a shift even then towards how do we prepare students to be better workers as opposed to providing a better education.
You sort of brought up something that I brought up in my music appreciation classes too. There's a certain point where you are responsible, and we had a co-board in Texas that was told us what to do. That's another story. Yes, we are preparing students for the workforce, and I think that there should be colleges that do that. And you worked at a technical college, and that's the specific purpose of those. Mm-hmm. Well-rounded education. I used to tell students, we are not here to get you a job. We are here to prepare you so you can go out and get it yourself.
Yeah.
So well-rounded education just multiplies with technology. I mean, it's hard to talk about Socrates when we're figuring out how to get images in the sky and back somewhere else and with better clarity or whatever, and what technology it takes to do that. Well-rounded, you can't learn everything anymore.
Yeah.
You could read the internet forever.
And there's no, but it used to be like, because I remember when I first started college, I was going to a community college, and the first 4 classes that I took were framed in a way of exploratory classes. And I mean exploratory.
Say that again. Framing the Way of Exploratory Classes.
Yes. So basically, those first 4 classes were what taught me how to study,
to get ready for the next class,
how to take and prepare for a test, like how to critically research, how to sort of look at things with a skeptical eye, to sort of be informed of both sides and to be able to communicate and talk through and dialogue.
Well, I think that's important today when students can get by through school using AI tools, and they don't really have to think. I think those kinds of skills are important.
I couldn't agree more. Like the critical thinking skill in particular, like if you learn to do that, it helps you so much in life.
Well, you figure it out eventually because you get situations put in front of you and you have to deal.
But I'd rather learn it in an environment where it's safe and you not have to because usually you learn that when there's dire consequences. Like you learn the mistake and you lose your job and that sets you back 6 months to a year, or you make a mistake and you put too much oil in your car and your car breaks down. Like those kind of rational, critical thinking things that if you could have been shown the way. And this is coming from a person that grew up kind of feral, right? I love my dad to death. He wasn't really around. And so a lot of things that I had to learn myself. And that was challenging. Especially because, I didn't know I was autistic at the time.
I didn't even know it myself. I have, and there's so many, the spectrum goes from here to here, as you know, but I have a granddaughter who's 4 or 5 and doesn't speak yet. She seems normal and I love her and we get along, but yeah, interesting.
So going back to the college then, so you transitioned to the music department from the radio station, right? What was it like working at the radio station?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, it was my first real job. When I lived, so I spent 10 years in West Texas and Lubbock, Texas, which is a legendary place. And I still love going back, but I sure wanted to get the hell out of there when I was there. To East Texas, which there's more woods. The culture's a little more deep south once you get to East Texas. But what was the question again? The transition between the two?
What was it like working at a radio station?
Oh, at a radio station. Well, first I'll talk about how I got into radio. I got a job teaching adjunct bass lessons at a junior college when I was 21, South Plains College in Levelland, Texas. That's another story, but I was there for 3 years. One of my bass students worked at this little, and I mean little podunk out in the country radio station in Levelland. It was a room that was about the size of this, and this is 6 feet that way and maybe 15 feet that way, and that was the whole radio station with an antenna. Anyway, he had a job there, and he, for some reason, had to quit bass lessons. He felt bad about it because he knew that my pay was going to come down by his, and he told me he was also leaving the radio station. So if I wanted to get out there. And so anyway, I did a little audition. I made a tape, and the guy asked me, I think minimum wage at that time was $3.15 an hour. And he asked me if I would work for $3.15 an hour. And I said, no. He said, how about $3.20? Okay. And so I worked at this little place for a few months, and then about a year later got a job at an AM radio station in Lubbock that was a country music station, but also did all the Cowboys and Rangers games. So it was well trafficked, and I was there for, I believe, 3 years before I moved into public radio. But radio was fun. I mean, what I really enjoyed most about it was rubbing elbows with anybody. When I was at KFYO in Lubbock, there was a sports talk show there. I was the engineer while one of the local TV sports guys interviewed mostly Texas Tech people. But at the time, I met Billy Joe Tolliver, I met Spike Dykes, I met Marcia Sharp, who was the coach of the Red Raider ladies when they won the national champion, Rockin' Robin Blake, who was a fighter. And then when I went to East Texas and I was the music director, I also got press credentials to games when I was at the classical music station just because I wanted to go.
Yeah.
So there were stories like that. But yes, like I said, I interviewed Chick Corea. I interviewed a lot of not only famous musicians, but really top of the world class. Van Cliburn, who's probably the most famous American classical pianist ever, was from Kilgore. And I got to meet him and interview him a couple of times. So that was really the thrill for me, was rubbing elbows with musical royalty as well as athletes. I got to go to games. I got to go to Stars games with my press credentials.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I went to Wrigley Field. I'm wearing my Cubs stuff because tonight is opening night. We're recording this on St. Patrick's Day.
Yeah.
And at 3:00 in the morning, the official Major League Baseball season begins with the Cubs and Dodgers in Japan. So I'm wearing my colors.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Uh-huh. So, a lot of people, there's a narrative out there, right, that public radio is a certain way or whatever. I want to sort of dispel that myth, right? Because the reality is public radio is there for the public good. It's not that it has a hidden agenda. It's not like,
no,
but you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, I think when you say that, but you think of NPR, who's traditionally fairly liberal as far as the news reporting is going.
Mm-hmm.
We used the BBC News. We didn't use NPR, and BBC could perhaps be a little more. So there were different types of public radio stations that were, and ours was really serving the classical music audience of East Texas and the jazz audience and the fine arts or whatever. We had the news, on at 5:00 every day or whatever, but it was BBC News. There's people on both sides of the aisle that can make arguments about what it is and what it does. And there's also an argument as to whether tax dollars should be supporting this. I think it's a damn shame if classical music is just not listened to anymore.
100%.
And it doesn't make it commercially. Orchestras have been struggling for years and years and years. And I don't even know the situation with and I have not gone to an Oregon Symphony concert since I've been here. I went to. But when you're talking about paying 70, 80 musicians for a concert every night, and we're talking world class, to be in a full-time orchestra, like the Seattle Symphony is one of the best in the country, one of the best in the world. And some of those people make money, and some people are just really struggling, and they are world class. How did Picasso make a living?
Right.
I don't know.
Because it was likely he wasn't making money with his paintings at the time.
I don't know.
But you're right.
But I'm just saying, to be world class doesn't, especially as a musician, does not necessarily guarantee you dollars. It guarantees you respect
and competition. Because there's only so many orchestras. There's only so many chairs. Like, I know of 3 concert violinists right now that don't have a place to play.
I'm talking about, this is one of the greatest orchestras in the world. The Chicago Symphony Orchestra has opening for Flute 2.
Mm-hmm.
There's probably 400 people auditioning, and probably 200 of them could handle it.
Yeah.
And the nuances between the great and what works in an ensemble. It's amazing that we're talking so much about classical music in here when all of a sudden I'm the blues guy.
Right? No, but I appreciate your world of knowledge, right? Especially so much music. And it is such a shame that it was sort of thrown away or cast aside.
I think Mozart will live on.
Yeah.
Like Aristotle lives on. But how many people read Aristotle?
Yeah, how many people read Kierkegaard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any of them.
Yeah. Which is a shame because, like, I'm of the ilk that believes in order to appreciate modern music, you have to appreciate the music that came before.
Well, you're right. And that brings up another part of the conversation. My parents didn't like my music.
Really?
Well, no, my dad liked Southern gospel, and they grew up in the 30s and 40s and when the Chuck Wagon Gang, and they didn't really listen to big band music, but most of the people that are that age were Glenn Miller and blah, blah, blah. And rock and roll was whatever. And, well, guess what? I'm not too hip on what I'm hearing today either. I'm 62 years old. I'll bring up the Kendrick Lamar. That was right. The Super Bowl thing. I didn't particularly get it when I saw it. I listened to the discourse that was going on. I haven't watched it again, but I get it. It wasn't my, this is something that I learned at Fixed Camp. When I say I don't really like hip hop so much, that's talking more about me than it is about hip hop.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of people out there that do like it. It's just not, and this is not a racist thing either, because I love R&B, and I love Earth, Wind and Fire, and I love Bootsy and blah, blah, blah. But whatever it is, here's my most controversial thing to hear. Whatever it is that they call R&B today, has very little to do with rhythm and nothing to do with the blues.
Yeah.
I love R&B, but I don't know what it is they call R&B now. Oh, somebody's going, and I get it. It's just my culture. I'm old now.
I totally get what you're saying, though. Like, right? I feel the same way about the old school country music. I just can't get into it. It's not complicated or complex enough.
See, and I have learned to love old country music. I'm an outlaw. My Pandora is way out there, and one of the genres that I absolutely love is what they call outlaw country. And I really do not like listening to contemporary country music that everybody boot scoots to or whatever. But I love Joe Ely, Guy Clark, Willie Nelson, and Merle Haggard, etc. Which, when you're talking about Merle and Willie and Waylon and all that, that's some of the old school stuff. It's the songs that I love. When you talk about the complexity or whatever, I get that. You can still groove to whatever beat there is, but it's the songs that when I hear John Prine, I really dig that.
See, and
James McMurtry, he's coming to Portland here in a few weeks, and I got to get me a ticket.
See, and I don't even know who these people are. That's sad.
Well, that comes from spending 10 years in Lubbock, Texas.
That's fair. Plus, like, my relationship with music is fairly recent.
Interesting.
Like, I have always been a huge fan of music. Always. Like, ever since I picked up my first Tool album, I was just blown away.
You say Tool?
Tool, yeah.
Yeah, I saw Tool here.
Oh.
I saw Tool recently, actually. So while we're talking Tool, so I took my stepson, who played in Nikki's band before. I don't know if you ever knew him, but anyway, we went. He's a drummer, and we went to a Tool concert in Texas in 2019. It was right before it was November 2019, right before COVID happened. And I'd heard of them. I knew of their music. I knew a couple of their songs or whatever. But as you know, Danny Carey, their drummer, is just the most unbelievable thing. And we were situated in the sort of like club section, which is first level at a arena, looking right down on the side of him. And I just stood there and I stared at him the whole time. And then I saw him recently in January. I went to a big bass magazine awards show, which had every bass player in the world there, or a bunch of them. And one of them that was being honored was Justin Chancellor, who's the Tool bass player. He was given a Lifetime Achievement Award. Victor Woot and Steve Bailey was there, and Danny Carey was there, who's the drummer. So they played a song, and then all of a sudden Vic and Steve left, and the rest of Tool came in.
Oh, that's so
and this
awesome.
is at a club. This was at a small venue, about the size of Headliners Club or something like that. So we had a half-hour Tool concert right there.
That's beautiful.
It was awesome.
That is so beautiful.
It was wonderful.
He's on my bucket list for interviews. Maynard.
Who?
Maynard James Keenan.
You know, one of the drummers that I play with, Joe Trump, I play with in the Pat Stillwell band, knows Danny. got backstage when so Danny was here with the Beat Tour thing.
Yeah.
And I went to that. But anyway, Danny was there, and Joe got backstage and got a picture with him.
I'm so jealous.
Yeah.
That's so awesome. But then how did you end up with the Nikki Jones Band?
Well, they just called me. So there's a lot of serendipitous things that happened when I got here with regards to getting involved in the music scene. It was one of my biggest concerns when I moved here, and I was not in a good mental place when I first moved here. And it was during COVID, and it was after I had retired and was not really doing the things that I wanted to do. I was just in a bad rut or whatever. And I wound up getting a job at an Amazon facility in Hillsboro. Now, I live in Kaiser. Hillsboro's 55 minutes away. But I sort of reintroduced myself to society when I was in a shell for about a year working at Amazon up there. Well, it turned out after I had gotten my first gig, which was with Jenny Moriarty in her jazz ensemble, we played at the garages in Beaverton one time. And then to get from Kaiser to Hillsboro, you have to go to Beaverton. Anyway, I went the highway, 217. It's just a mile off of where that old At the Garages was. And when I was doing that, At the Garages had like 3 open jams and an open mic every week. So I stopped there 2 or 3 times a week and played at open jams and stuff. And Pat Stillwell had his open jam there, and his bass player, Kirk Bryant, broke his hand, and Pat asked me to be in that group. And so since then on, I played with Pat, and for a couple of years I was playing in his open jams. Now, what was great about this is he would have a guest every week. I played with Doug Rowell. I played with Lloyd Jones. I played with Ty Curtis. I played with Brandon Logan. I played with all of these great musicians, Kevin Self, Josh Makowski, you name all the great guitar players in town. They would come in as a guest, and I would play a set with them. And then they would have the open jam, and sometimes I have to stay up there, and sometimes there'd be enough bass players that I just sat down the whole thing. But I was so lucky to have that gig, especially when it moved over to the Lake Oswego location.
Yeah.
And because I met all of these top-notch musicians, and Brandon was one of them. And I think we had Brandon there twice, and the second time he brought Nikki. And they just messaged me one time and asked if I'd be interested in playing in their band. And I didn't really know. I'd heard Nikki sing before. I knew Brandon's reputation. I thought, well, Brandon, hell yeah, I'll play with Brandon. And then they sent me their CD. And you've heard that CD, Battle Me Up.
It's in my car.
It is, I thought, hell yeah, I'll play with these guys. And it's, there's so many, like I said, so many serendipitous things. They live about 2 miles away from me in Kaiser. We were rehearsing at their house in their garage bedroom. That's what it is.
Yeah.
We were rehearsing there, so I didn't have to go far to rehearse. And things just kept sounding better and better. And, any industry that you get in, personal relationships become very, very important. And I play in, I don't know, it depends on you count them, 5 or 6 different bands that would call me if they're doing a gig. And I've just developed a relationship with Nikki and Brandon and Anna Banana and Lucy and Eli, their kids. Excuse me. And so it's just sort of gelling with them. And on top of that, the music, and I really, we've had a few different variations. We've used other guitar players, and Bruce McKay, who's one of the guys that really helped write a lot of the songs, has been with us. But we've been practicing a lot 4-piece lately, and it's been really growing into something that I think is very special.
I couldn't agree more. And I have the lucky position of being able to watch you all practice.
Yep, you've been coming over.
I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do, is just to sit there and watch you all sort of gel, because like when I first started, even compared to now, the growth of the band and the growth and how much you all have symmetry now is just, it's something to see. It's different.
Yeah, it is different. Yeah, I'll tell you, the first difference is that we practice every week.
Yeah.
And that's something that I'm not really used to. When I was in Texas, I wasn't playing in blues bands. I was playing in jazz bands. I play upright bass, and I would have somebody from another college that played saxophone, another one played trumpet, another one played guitar, and we'd get together when you get a real book out and play Miles Davis or Coltrane or Brubeck or whatever it is. And we never rehearsed. We'd have the structure in front of us, and we would just make it up as we go along. It's interesting. Ding, ding, ding. Thinking of all the different bands I am playing with. Andrew Matthews, Pat Stillwell, Nikki Jones. I'm also excited to play with Taylor Newville, who the Rolling Tones. And when he decides to do it, Eric Lovery, who is the former guitarist, songwriter of the Dharma Bums. That's been a blast. And that's something
the Dharma Bums?
Yeah, are you familiar with Dharma Bums? Well, Dharma Bums was a precursor to the whole grunge Seattle movement. The Dharma Bums were around in Portland in the late 80s, 88, 89. He tells me they sold about 400,000 albums back in those days, and it was kind of a pre-grunge act. And they seem to have an influence on what happened, later on. If you look Dharma Bums up on Wikipedia, the last paragraph, last sentence talks about Courtney Love in an interview with somebody, blah, 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 says, excuse me, I met Kurt at a Dharma Bums concert. So anyway, and what's funny is not funny. This is kind of big news too. They recently, within the last 6 months or so, maybe 8 months, acquired all of their old 16-inch tapes, all of their old music that had been, they didn't, everything they recorded didn't come out there, and they've been back in his analog studio, and it's analog. He's got everything analog, like it's from the 70s. Awesome. And they're going through it, and they're going to release I believe they're going to release a mix of stuff of Lost Dharma Bums counts. And let's hope that they do a 12-city tour or something like that. But anyway, Eric lives in Salem, and somehow it's my stepson who got me in this band. He just went into his shop. He owns a place called Tube King out on one of those.
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I've got to play with him. But all of those bands have when we played with Eric, we rehearsed every Friday for a couple of months before. Some of them don't rehearse at all. Some of them rehearse a couple of times. But with Nikki and Brandon, we pretty much rehearse all the time, and we are still developing. There's a lot of music on the album for Brandon to try to handle as one guitar player.
Yeah.
So he has to come up with stuff that fits into the space. I love the space. I love it when we don't play so many notes that there's some space for both of us, especially him to do things.
Yeah.
And it's developing, and he's certainly one of my favorite guitarists that I've ever played with, and we are developing a rapport, and I'm very thankful to be a part of it.
And I've said this story once. I'll probably say it like 15 million other times too. It was like, I remember the day I knew Brandon was different is we were out at Bear Creek, and I think Bruce was there. You weren't there. And Brandon forgot his guitar. And instead of going back to get his guitar, he grabbed that red piece of junk off the wall that sounded like garbage.
I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but yeah, there's a few guitars hanging on the wall.
There's a red one up on the side.
Is that the one that he signed?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that's why he signed it, is because he pulled it off the wall. It sounded like garbage. It just was horrible. 5 minutes. He had it up in shape, and he played freaking Jimi Hendrix on that freaking guitar.
Yep.
And that was it. I was like, hands down, one of the best damn guitar players I've ever heard in my life.
He is very, very good.
Yeah.
And he, how I judge guitar players is not necessarily what chops they have, though I adore the Joe Satriani's of the world, etc. Yeah. But what makes Brandon and other guitar players different is when they let the music come through them, and you can see that and feel that. They're not trying to play something, they're letting it come through. You know, David Gilmour is like that.
And there's an imperfection that makes the music perfect.
I'll buy that.
Yeah. Because it's coming through them, and it may be like one or two notes that are slightly off.
You might get in the way just a little bit.
Yeah. But that's what I like. I love that when it happens. Like, I respect it more, I think.
Yep.
And like, so I think a lot of people don't understand what to expect when they go to like a jam. So I want to do a circle back there because you played on the jam session for a while. What is a jam session? I've been to a few. I love them, but a lot of people who are listening may not even know what that is.
It's an opportunity for anybody who plays an instrument to get up on a stage, is what it is. There are some jams that are more, well, usually there are enough talented players to get up there. You know, again, it could be anybody, and sometimes you have to get the hook out there quick or whatever. It depends on the place you're at. But especially in the blues community, and I just want to say I was just amazed that Portland had such a big blues community when I moved here. I had no idea. I get to my very first jam, the first time I got on stage. Dan Hess was the guitar player, Sonny's brother. And I had no idea what to expect. He turned around and says, and here I lived in Texas for 38 years. He says, you think you know Stevie Ray Vaughan, A House is a Rockin'? I thought, I could probably hang on to that. Well, it was, the Dallas Stars. Every time they won, they played that at the end of the game. And I was a season ticket holder. So I heard that song a couple times. And then he called up Tad Benoit. Tad Benoit is a guy from Louisiana. And I lived in East Texas, about 50 miles away from Louisiana, and he used to play in the neighborhood quite a bit. And okay, I can play that one too. And I just had no idea that Portland was a blues town. And I find out that it's not only a blues town, it's a serious blues town. I've been to Memphis, I've been to St. Louis. I grew up 80 miles from Chicago. And well, I'll tell you one thing, I've never seen so many great bass players in one place in my life, anywhere. It's unbelievable how many really, really good bass players there are in the Portland area. And really all of, I say that, and here we are in Salem. There's some good ones here too. But, yeah, I had no idea. And so it's something that I could do well and getting some gigs.
And so from a perspective of somebody who enjoys music, right? I want people to know that these blues jam sessions are good enough for you to enjoy the music. It's not like comedy open mic nights.
No,
it's totally different.
Yeah, you have, there's a lot of really good players who are not playing in bands every weekend out there.
Yeah.
They're whether it has to do with age or their family situation or whatever, it's a recreational thing for them to go to these jams. And there are so many of them. Again, and I'm dealing with Portland. There's well, here we are in Salem, West Side. I've not gone to the West Side Station Jam.
It's so much
Yes,
fun.
I have. I was the house guy there one time. But yeah, I've done that. But and when you talk about blues jams, um, well, again, if you have good ears, like we were talking about, you can usually hang on to chord sequences if they, talk about it ahead of time. But no, it could be very entertaining, and some of them, you go to Trails End Saloon on a Sunday night, there's no telling who will show up there. You go to the Lair on a Thursday night, oftentimes the house keyboard player is Dover Weinberg, who is Robert Cray's keyboard player. I was there one night when Reinhardt, what's Reinhardt's last name, the drummer? It's a German name. Anyway, he's Gino Vanelli's drummer, among other players. He's unbelievable. But I was there at the Lair one night when he was there. So you just never know who's going to show up. That's another thing about going to the jam. So I need to get back a little more, actually, but it's a 45-mile drive.
I know. Like, one of my favorite places is the Mekong Bistro.
Yeah.
I just love that place. And
Good
I go
food
there as often as I can, but it's a hike sometimes. And I was just at the Raven Kings Jam at Westside Station this last week.
What night is that?
Thursday
night. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I love Ish to death. She's an amazing singer.
I don't know.
So she's the singer, one of the two singers. Jessie DeVille is the other one. Amazing guitarist. But she got me on stage.
I think I saw a video of that. It wasn't karaoke. You were up there with the band. What'd you sing?
I sang Turn the Page.
On a dark and dusty highway. Yeah.
East of Omaha.
Yep.
And then Stained Outside.
Well, good for you.
Yeah.
Singing is something that people in America don't do. I used to talk about this in my music appreciation classes. And I would tell, and these are college students, I said, if I asked you all to stand up and sing My Country 'Tis of Thee, would you do it? And even in church, nobody really.
Well, that's a horrible song.
Well, whatever. I mean, you think of anything. Nobody wants to sing because they're so worried about what they, sound like.
Yeah, that's fair.
This is what I love about hockey. You get up to Canada, and we just had the Four Nations face-off out here.
Yeah.
You sing, you put the Canadian national anthem on, and everybody is singing drunk and loud, oh, God! And we don't do that. And I think that's a shame.
That's interesting you said that, because I was just at the Mekong for the Battle of the Bands. And they had a battle of the bands, and they did the Filipino national anthem first, before the American national anthem.
The Filipino national anthem. I don't know it.
And I didn't either. But like, everybody was up on their feet and singing.
Yeah.
And then you switch to the American national anthem, and everybody stops and puts their hand on their heart, and they just stare.
Yep.
And it's like, I didn't realize that was a cultural thing until you said something.
Yeah, singing in the last 30 years have just, when I was a little kid, we'd get up and sing.
Yeah.
And again, I grew up going to church where everybody, whether they were any good or not, sang out loud. But yeah, it's been a long time since you go to a ball game and everybody's singing the national anthem.
Yeah, it's very strange. It's just it's interesting. It's an interesting observation that
go to Germany and they'll sing.
Yeah. How interesting. I lived in Germany for about 2 years. Wow. Mind blown. And then, so when you come up to a blues or jam like that, and you're a musician, the cool part that I saw is that you sort of put your name on a list and what kind of song you want to sing. And then they sort of get people together based on who knows the song and who doesn't.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them will just go down the list and they'll find 2 or 3 guitar players, a bass player, and a drummer the next on the list, and then they'll do that. Sometimes you can sort of request, I want to play with these people, and if it fits their agenda, you can do that. But it's a whole culture there. A lot of those guys all get to know each other, and you see a lot of the same people there from week to week. Sunday nights, you can go to 4 different jams on a Sunday night. You've got Kevin Self at Blue Diamond from 5 to 8. You've got the Trails End from 7 to 10.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Montevilla from 8 to whenever they finish. And it could be 8 to 11. And one time I was in the host band and it was 1:30 before we got done with that one. There's a jazz jam, which I've attended a couple of times at Clyde's. And I think that's like 7 to 10 or 6 to 10 or something. And I've had thoughts of going back and playing some jazz, but right now I'm staying busy enough, I guess.
Yeah. And the one thing that did surprise me more than anything else as I ventured across this blues community, concerts wrap up at like 10, 11 at night.
I think COVID had something to do with that.
Yeah.
But it's something that I'm very thankful for. I think probably part of the reason, I told you I was playing in jazz bands when I was in Texas, and I was there for 38 years, and that's what I did was play wineries and play Miles Davis and Brubeck and whatever. And part of the reason is I was not interested in doing the bar scene because you didn't end till 2:00, and everybody was drunk and stupid by then. And I didn't want to be drunk and stupid every night, or whatever. So I would go see some of my friends every once in a while and get drunk and stupid every once in a while. But I just wasn't, I don't know. I was playing jazz. And I get here, yes. And I'm very thankful that usually you end at either 11 or midnight.
Yeah.
There's been a couple times I've gone later. But yes, I do think that COVID had something to do with that. I think everybody started shutting down earlier after COVID and just stayed that way because they didn't want to have to be up till 3:00 in the morning. Thank God.
And one of the things I love to ask musicians, do you remember your first live performance?
Yes. It's funny. I was thinking about this yesterday, I think. Just came to my brain. My first live performance was 5th grade, all school choir in the gym at New Milford. I sang the second verse of The Little Drummer Boy.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was my first. I was pretty nervous, and I remember because I was in the gym, and I didn't think about this, but when I did it in the classroom, I had a certain voice, but in the gym, I had to belt it, so I decided to get operatic. Little baby. But yeah, I did that. But when you talk about bass, the first performance was the Kiss band that I talked to you about, which
did dressing up in makeup make it a little easier to get on stage?
Oh, I don't know. Nerves have not been a big part of for me, and there are some much greater musicians than me that still get nervous.
Yeah,
and I've never really, maybe early on, was I was also a song leader at church, so I was in front of people a lot, when I was younger. I still get a little, I say nerves. You get certain hyped up when you have a really, like if we're playing the Waterfront Blues Festival.
Yeah.
You get, you realize that there's a few thousand people out there, and it's your time to shine.
Was that the biggest venue you ever played?
I guess so. The first time, now when we talk about that, this was not when I was playing with Nikki. I didn't know anything about the Waterfront Blues Festival when I moved here. But I, as I said, was playing with Patrick Stilwell, and I also started playing with Andrew Matthews about the same time, and somebody convinced them to let both of those bands play the first Waterfront Blues Festival I'd ever heard of. So I didn't know what I was getting myself into. But I remember that day. It was the opening day of Waterfront Blues Festival 22. I think it was a Wednesday. Josh Makowski opened the place on one side of the big field, and then it was the Andrew Matthews Band. So I played with them then, and then there was somebody else, and then I played with Patrick Stilwell on the same stage. And, it wasn't a huge crowd earlier in the day. There were several thousand people there. But that's, I mean, there's been a few full auditoriums that I played at when I was younger, playing with some college bands and things like that. But Waterfront Blues Festival was, the most prestigious, played a couple of festivals in Texas as well.
Is there a difference between playing in like a local, like small venue versus a blues festival sort of environment?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You sort of have to feed more on the energy and let the crowd sort of dictate when you progress, kind of thing, or?
Well, you try to get yourself in character, and that's a very big mental thing before any gig, whether there's 2 or 3 people or a big crowd. But, those outdoor like fair shows and things like that, you're just trying to get people on the dance floor. Really, I mean, that's my job.
Yeah.
So I do that when I get into my own zone and get in tune with everybody else, and hopefully other people are listening. But yeah, I love playing bigger venues if I ever have a chance. I mean, it's a dream to do a touring band kind of thing.
That would be so awesome.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. It'd be a lot of work, but awesome.
Yeah. A lot of time away from home.
Well, we've been at it for an hour.
All right. I wondered.
So what's next for you?
Well, I mean, I've got some gigs coming up. I've got something going on every weekend for the next few weeks. I've got Nikki's got a performance in Lebanon coming up. And
my birthday?
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
After that, let me think. I've got a Taylor Newville gig the weekend after that. I've got an Andrew Matthews gig the weekend after that. I've got something else, and then my wife and I are going up to Vancouver, British Columbia to see her favorite guitarist, Jesse Cook.
Oh,
he's
nice.
Sort of a Spanish guitar, well, sort of like that. He's Canadian and does this nylon string, but she just loves him, and we usually come see him when he's around here, and he's not coming here, so we're going up there. But yeah, I've got a few things going on this summer. I'm so thankful to play for the people I play for.
And the music that you put on stage is awesome.
Well, thank you.
And it's a pleasure that I've had the opportunity to get to know you.
You too.
And I'm so excited to see what's next for everybody.
Yeah. I don't know if this is an official announcement or not, but I'm pretty sure that Nikki Jones Band will be doing the Journey to Memphis auditions again this year.
They need to.
So yeah, and
yes.
It's going to be 4-piece. So we'll see where that takes us.
So 4-piece means
the band, yeah, me, Brandon, her, and
Lauren.
And Lauren. Mm-hmm. In other words, we're not going to have an extra guitar player this year. I like the space. We both like the space, and I think it creates sounds that are unique amongst.
Yeah, because I would imagine guitarists can kind of be competitive.
Oh,
yeah.
You got another hour? Yes, guitar players can be competitive, as drummers can be. But yes, guitar players, and they admit it too.
Yeah.
Joe Wash and who's the other Eagles guy? He's coming around here. Don Felder.
Yeah.
Were notoriously competitive. And it made Hotel California sound like it did.
And it got in the way of Jane's addiction.
I don't know that story, but yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm thrilled.
So it just recently happened.
Oh, is that, wait a minute, the guitar, the
Dave Navarro was on stage and the lead singer of Jane's Addiction had a meltdown.
Yes.
Yeah. That was.
Well, that's a mental health problem. Yeah.
That's fair. Well, Kevin, let's wrap this up.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
Do it again sometime. I could go on and on.
We can do this again.
All right.
I would like that. You be kind, you all. We're only one person on this planet. We only have one time. It's so much easier to be nice than it is to be mean. So thank you very much. And that's it.
See ya.